Spence Jr. and Terence Bud Crawford go head-to-head. We cannot wait for Saturday, July 29th. It'll be shown live on Showtime pay-per-view, presented by Premier Boxing Champions and promoted by TGB Promotions. I am privileged to be joined alongside some amazing names within the sport of boxing. I'm going to run them down one by one. First of all, a man who shared the ring with Errol Spence back in September of 2019 at what was then called Staples Center in Los Angeles. What an epic battle that was, and that had an absolute barn burner in November of 2021 in Las Vegas at Michelob Ultra Arena. Privileged to be joined alongside by the former welterweight champion of the world, Showtime Shawn Porter. Shawn, how excited are you for July 29th?
I'm excited. I'm at church last night, and they're talking about it at church. So
you're talking about it at church.
And this is a big one, man. This is the biggest, and I'm excited about it.
All right, Shawn, privileged to be joined alongside by you. Also, another man that has shared the ring with both individuals, fought Terence Crawford back in 2020, also fought Errol Spence back in 2016. Kell Brook joining us, the former welterweight champion of the world. Kell, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Kell, you have shared the ring with both guys yourself as well, but how much are you looking forward to seeing what unfolds on Saturday, July 29th?
I'm very excited. Like Shawn said, everyone's talking about this fight. It's a massive fight. It's who's number one. And I'd actually put them as pound for pound in all the divisions. This is for the one. We've got Terence Crawford and we've got my man Errol Spence. And they're gonna go hard at it.
We're very much looking forward to the matchup. And now, from a trainer's standpoint, a man who has been in the corner of the likes of Andre Ward, also Amir Khan as well, Andre Bertil, the esteemed Virgil Hunter. Virgil, you know both guys, both Terence Crawford and also Errol Spence. How much are you just counting down the days until we see this mega welterweight championship affair on July 29th?
Well, the fight can't come soon enough. I'm excited, especially to get both men at their peaks. Both men seem hungry and ready to go, and I expect a very epic night.
Very much, as all of us are. As is a man who's a student of the game, another esteemed trainer, been in the corner of the likes of Julian J. Rock Williams and Kayla Plant as well. Stephen Breadman Edwards from Philadelphia. Breadman, I know you love boxing probably more than anybody on the planet, but how much are you anticipating this matchup?
Man, it's a big fight. It really is. It's funny because the day after the fight, I'm supposed to go out to Des Moines, Iowa for my kids to run in the AAU Junior Olympics. And instead of getting the tickets on the 29th, I got to get the tickets on the 30th because I don't want to be nowhere where I miss this fight. So we're actually leaving for Junior Olympics a day late just so I can see the fight.
Wow, unbelievable. I mean, that is commitment, but you know what? I'm sure that you are among thousands who are doing exactly that. I'm going to go back to you, Shawn, in regards to you shared the ring with both guys. Looking at it from an X's and O's standpoint, what is the difference between both fighters?
Yeah, I think that there's two narratives out there. I think, or really there's one narrative. That narrative is that Terence Crawford can do more things in the ring. He's got more tools in his toolbox. And even though Errol Spence is a basic boxer, he's the most fundamentally sound boxer in the world. I do agree with that, but Errol's got more in his arsenal as well. And I think that we've never been able to see him pull out everything that he's had to use. Terence has been in the ring with guys who have done different things, and he's had to present other things go into his toolbox. But I do think that from an X's and O's standpoint, it's all a matter of what are you going to do this round, because they both have the ability to make adjustments and they both have the ability to be aggressive. They both have the ability to fight off of the back foot, counterpunch. I mean, even from, again, the X's and O's standpoint, this is an outstanding fight because they both have A+ in every box. And it's just, yeah. I honestly think that we're going to see probably 3 different strategies from both of them throughout the course of a 12-round fight, maybe even 4 or 5.
So plan A through D.
Hey, you can ask Bradman and you can ask Virgil. I mean, having 4 or 5 different game plans within one fight is it's probably impossible. But I mean, both of these guys have to have all of that in order to win the fight.
Virgil, for you, you had to prepare Amir Khan for Terence Crawford back in April of 2019. What was your strategy like? And if you were Errol Spence, how would you prepare him? If you were Derek James, how would you prepare Errol Spence to find Terence Crawford on July 29th on Showtime pay-per-view?
Well, to be honest, the Canelo fight ruined Amir Khan. It took a lot out of him. He took 2 years off. He always had issues about being dedicated to the sport. So when he came to me for that fight, it was just a matter of getting him in the best condition I could get him in, because he wasn't in great condition, and try to get him to do what he did best, and that was box. It was just unfortunate that the Canelo fight took a lot out of him, and after that fight, he never was the same. And that's not putting him down or anything. It was a fight that I was totally against, but it happened. So I knew he had a tough road ahead when he fought Terence Crawford. The decision was made, and we got him in the best shape that we could, get him in the best spot we could get him in. And my decision was to make the calls as the rounds went by to see if I can get him through the fight. And that was the plan. As far as being in Derek's head, I don't know. I'm not in the gym with him. I know from what I see that Errol has a grind it out, go get you mentality. I don't think they're going to deviate from what works. It doesn't make sense to go against what works. I think in this fight, it's not the fighter that's what I'm going to do to you. I think the fighter that wins is the one that's not going to let the other do what he wants to do. And that's how I'd sum it up.
Kell, for you, what did you notice in the ring from both guys, and hearing both Shawn and Virgil talk? Is it a foregone conclusion to you that we are going to get some toe-to-toe action at some point during the fight?
We're gonna get some toe-to-toe action. What I got from Errol Spence is a very big welterweight. He's obviously a natural southpaw. He's big, he's strong, he goes to the body good. His IQ is very good in that ring. The thing for me is inactivity. Is that at the recent times, I think that, but like I say, he's one of obviously Shawn, Errol, and Crawford, and Golovkin. I have to say the best I've been in with, and they've got that aura about them. They've got that. They've got the X factor, both fighters. But I think Terence Crawford, for me, he can box either style, orthodox, southpaw. He's a very sharp shooter, he's a very good finisher. I think the stronger guys, Errol Spence. But like I said, it's a small margin, in this fight. It's going to come down to, like Virgil and I said, who prepared the best, and who's going to go in there and do, like he's just pointed out, not let the other fighter do what he's come to do, and just be as, like Shawn said as well, they're going to need every game plan to go into this fight. They need absolutely everything they've learned all the career, all the life in this fight, because this is the real test. Who number one is in the division.
Kell, are you concerned for Errol that he might have a little bit of ring rust because he hasn't been in the ring since April of last year, which would make it over a 15-month layoff that he's going to be encountering coming up on Saturday, July 29th, when he matches up against Terence Crawford?
It is, yeah. I think him mentally, he'll know that as well. He'll be questioning himself about, at the time that he's not being active in a proper fight. So, I think, it's worrying, but, time will tell. Time will tell. I think that Crawford's been, his recent fight has been looking very well, and he's going to be confident going into this fight. But like we said, these are true champions, and we're going to see exactly what they've got in their arsenal, come this month.
Bradman, for you, if you were in the corner of Terence Crawford, if you were Brian McIntyre, Bo Mac, how would you attack Errol Spence, and what game plan would you create to be able to remain undefeated and upend Errol Spence?
It's a good question. Obviously, he's 39-0, so they've always come up with the right game plan. Crawford doesn't have a lot of chinks in his armor. The one thing that I would be concerned about in this fight that I was able to see Kell and Shawn do is, for some reason, Terence is a little bit of a slow starter. For some reason, I don't know if it's a slow starter, but it takes him a little while to adjust. And in the beginning rounds of his fight with Kell Brook and Shawn Porter, they was able to get a lot of good work done. So I would be real conscious of that, be real conscious of Terence remaining defensively responsible early in the fight, because I think he's a terrific fighter. He's one of the best fighters I've ever seen, but that's the one little thing about him early in fight. You could kind of like get to him before he kind of adjusts and makes his adjustments. And with Errol is a little bit of a snowball fighter. If he gets his rhythm and he's coming forward and he's walking you down behind that hard southpaw jab, it could. I'm not saying Terence can't adjust to Errol. I'm just saying that with a fighter like Errol, you don't want him to get his rhythm and start going downhill on you. So that would be, sometimes you look at fighters and you become infatuated with their ability, and everybody's infatuated with Terence's ability to score these beautiful knockouts and hit guys with shots they don't see. But as a trainer, you look for a tendency that your fighter has of not so much a flaw, but, things that he can work on. And that's the one thing that I would be worried about in this fight, of letting Errol get in his rhythm, establishing that hard southpaw jab and starting to go downhill. That would be the first thing I will address if I was in Terence's corner. The other thing would be counteracting Errol's body punching. Errol hits you to the body all night long and kind of wears you out. And I've never seen, besides Shawn, nobody really go to Terence's body all night long. If you notice, I notice small things. Terence wears his trunks up kind of high,
Mm-hmm.
and I would be curious to see, how he can overcome Errol's grinding body shots. Errol hits you with a right hook to the body and a left from the southpaw stance. It's like a left uppercut, and he rinses and repeats it and does it all night long. So I would be conscious to see that. And the third thing is, I believe that Terence is the puncher in this fight. Not so much that he punches harder than punches harder than Errol. I think he can hit you with shots that Errol doesn't hit guys with. Errol kind of beats you down with his power, where Terence hits you on the money with shots you don't even see. And I would have him punching with Errol. I know that Errol's a bigger guy, and I know that Errol is perceived to be stronger, but I would have Terence punching with him. I think Terence is really, really gifted, where he can keep his eye on the target and punch with guys and land clean shots. I don't think he's the hardest puncher I've ever seen as far as one punch knockout, but he has that ability to hit you while you're punching with a shot you don't see, and he doesn't have to load up on it. It's like a fast, snappy shot. I think that his victory over Kell Brook is underrated. I think Kell Brook was fighting a great fight. I think he was in shape. He was sharp. I thought he won the first 2 or 3 rounds. I got to look back on it, but I thought he was doing great. And Terence made an adjustment and threw a great punch while Kell was punching that Kell never saw. And, people dismissed it and was like, well, Kell's a little old. No, Kell Brook was sharp that night. He was ready to fight, and he was doing really, really good. And I think that punch and that victory gets a little bit underrated, but that's Terence's career in a nutshell. He does things that, that's so subtle that he probably doesn't get the full credit for him. So to answer you, I would make sure that he got off to a more defensively responsible start, not let Errol touch his body, and I would have him punching with Errol, because I think that he's the puncher in this fight in terms of being able to score that highlight film knockout.
At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our PR extraordinaire, Andrew Roberts. I'm sure the media has many questions to ask our esteemed panel. Showtime, Shawn Porter, Kell Brook, Virgil Hunter, and Stephen Breadman Edwards. Andrew, it's all you, my friend.
Thanks very much, Ray. Our first media question is going to come from Andrew Jones with
Andrew,
Anscape.
we want to see your face, Andrew.
Yourself, and you can ask your questions.
We want to see your face, Andrew.
I love you too, Shawn. We'll keep the focus on you guys. Andrew, please, if you would, unmute yourself and you can ask your questions.
Appreciate it, other Andrew, for the comedy, and Shawn with the funny line right there. I was going to ask Virgil where Damian Lillard was going to go in the trade discussions, but that's another conversation there. Wanted to ask you, gentlemen, as Steven's making that great point about Terence's settled power and how his power has increased as he's moved up to 147. Do you believe that he will be able to stop Spence from coming forward with his power, or will Spence's power and at least his chin be resistant towards that and he'll still keep on coming like Errol Spence does with his style? I asked that first to you, Virgil.
This question's for me.
Yes.
You know, it's funny. I had the fortunate time to spend in the gym one day with Terence. He was down here visiting Andre, and he came to the gym. And one thing that I will say, that his physical strength is very underrated. I don't know if Shawn can attest to that or Kell could attest to that. The way he's built, genetically built, and the way he has stayed in the gym his whole career, he's never gotten out of condition, which brings the snap to his punch. I don't know if he remembers, but we padded a couple of rounds. And as Brad said, he was pretty much accurate. He has a real buggy whip snap to his punch. It's not hard, but you could feel a snap. It's like if you're in a towel fight and you swing the towel, you can go all night long. But if you snap it, you're going to back off and say, what's going on? And his physical strength, he was a wrestler early on, and I've watched him tussle with big guys and get them down to the ground. So he's built from the feet up with his physical strength, not from the shoulders down. So I think he can generate a lot of power. The thing is, I like Errol and I like the way he fights, but at some point that grind down style, as you age, will slow up with you. So as B-Hop made 3 adjustments in his career. When he first started, he was the executioner. Then he was X, then he became the alien, and he fought into his 40s because he made these adjustments as time went by. Because physically, those grind out camps where you have to fight that style that Errol fights, you have to grind every single day. And as Kell attested, he's had a lot of gaps in his career. The car wreck, you have to take that into effect. I don't care what you do or what you look like, that does have an effect. Errol himself has admitted that he's had a lifestyle that wasn't always good. That does damage to the internal organs that's irreversible. And we just have to see. I think that his determination and his drive is A+, and that's going to be the factor in the fight. I think, again, it's who can stop the other guy from doing what he wants to do as opposed to me doing what I want to do.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Andrew. Our next question is going to come from Erica Fernandez with Sporting News. Erica, please unmute yourself and you can ask your question. Erica, can you hear us? Oh, all right. We'll try coming back to Erica. Next up, let's go to Cam Buford with the LA News Observer. Cam, please unmute yourself and you can ask your question. Cam, you there?
Fuck, that's all of a sudden.
Wow, okay. We'll go to Kirk Jackson. Kirk, please unmute yourself and you can ask your questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you to all the fighters and trainers. We definitely appreciate your time and your perspective. My question is more so geared towards the fighters. Shawn and Kell, I'm sure you both studied immensely for your fights with Spence and Crawford, respectively. Was there anything that caught you by surprise with either fighter, like whether it was like the speed, the strength, the angles, or the punch variety that you saw from both fighters?
I'll go ahead and go first. And I'm definitely gonna paint this picture the correct way. When I fought Errol, going into that fight, I said I need everything to beat this guy. I can't leave anything at the gym. I can't leave anything at home. I had to take everything, and in order to beat this guy. And I think about 5 rounds went by, and just a simple move, a pullback counter, and I counter punched his jab with my jab, and he shook his head and he said something, and I said, oh, I got you. And what I realized in that moment was he's not as smart, not as intellectually sound as I thought he was going to be, and that seemed to kind of carry through the entire fight. I felt like I was a step ahead of Errol the entire fight, all the way up until that knockdown moment. And that was surprising to me. I thought that Errol was going to be more intelligent in the ring, and I thought that simple pullback counter move. It's one thing to get hit with it, like, you know, things happen, you know, but for him to acknowledge it and show how frustrated he was in that moment, and then I started to see other moments of frustration as well. When we talked about this fight years ago, I said, well, Terence the smarter fighter, he's gonna win this fight. But I think that ever since this accident that Errol has sustained, and I think that having to come back from that and having to just grow up and get rid of a lot of things in his life, I think that he's a smarter fighter now than he was when we fought in 2019. And I don't think that there's going to be any surprises for either guy in the ring. There weren't any surprises for me when I fought Terence. Everything that came to me was everything that I thought was coming and expected the whole 9. And I think that one little stain, for the sake of words, that Errol had back in the day, 2019, when we fought, I believe that stain is gone too. So I don't think either guy is going to be surprised at all.
I have to second that as well. You know, when I got in with Terence Crawford, you know, I didn't expect him to be as. I knew we were going to be sharp, but I think just the way that he could switch in a fight so naturally, you know, against obviously a world-class fighter, and be so relaxed, orthodox and southpaw, and just the angles what he was chucking his shots, you know, are surprising. You know, very sharp puncher. You know, he's not the. I don't want to say he's the like Errol Spence is more grinding, more thumping kind of power. It is more sharp and snapping. Terence is, you know, and surprising. You know, that's what I take from them too. You know, and he does get frustrated, Errol Spence. He does get frustrated. You know, in the fight what we had. You know, we're catching him with shots. He gets frustrated. He shows it. You know, but like I said, you know, we're talking about two, you know, A-star fighters, you know, and it's like I say, it's going to come down to many things in this fight, and they're going to have to bring absolutely every part of their game to get the victory.
All right, thank you for that, Kell and Shawn. Thank you for the question, Kirk. Our next question is going to come from Chris Murray with the Philadelphia Sunday Sun. Chris, if you could please unmute yourself, you can ask the question.
Yeah, my question to you, and my question is to the fighters, Kell, Brook, and Shawn Porter. My first statement would be, you know, Crawford has to do what to win, and then my second question would be, what does Errol Spence have to do if he wins? What will he do well if he wins this fight for both of them? So starting with any one of you guys can take this first.
Go ahead, Kell.
You know, I just think that me looking in, I'd say that, you know, but it's hard when we're talking about these levels of fighters. You know, looking as a fan looking in, you'd say that Errol Spence used to use his size, be calculated, go down to the body, you know, calculated pressure, you know, be the bigger guy in the fight, you know, and dominate, you know, from round 1. You know, and looking in again, I'd say that, you know, Crawford has to be a sharpshooter, just on the end of the shot, you know, firing back over his shots, and, you know, using the ring, you know, sharp shooting like he does, picking the right shot at the right time, you know, making Spence work when he don't want to work, you know, and just being very clever and sharpshooting and getting the rounds and breaking him down, you know, over the fight.
I agree 100% with all of that. I think the calculated pressure from Errol has to be something that he sustains the entire night, that he continues to put on the pressure and the body punching. And I think the two things that Breadman said earlier, number one, if you're Terence Crawford, you got to get to Errol's body. You got to make him uncomfortable. Do things to him that he's not used to having been done to him. Going to the body is certainly one of them. And then the other thing that Breadman said, in between Errol Spence's punches, Errol has a really tight defense, keeps his hands up, he keeps his hands at home. If he's not punching, his hands are up. And that's something you can't say about a lot of fighters. And so with a guy like that, you have to find openings. Those openings are usually there when that punch is being released. And so, like Breadman said, punch when he's punching, and then right there to what Kell said, be accurate, be that sharpshooter. And again, I mean, we're talking about a great fight because we're not saying nothing that either of these guys can't do. You know, and so I think that's why this is such a great fight. I mean, you're talking about punching in between the gloves. All you guys on the call, you guys can attest that is it's hard to find the timing. It's hard to find the distance. It's hard to be confident to do it. Terence can do that. And then we're talking about all night pressure. We've seen Errol do that, you know, so it's going to be a great fight.
All right. Thank you very much for that question, Chris. Next up, Jonathan Nagyoff for Pro Boxing Fans. Jonathan, if you could unmute yourself, please ask your question.
Yeah, this is a question for Kell and Shawn. If you were both to fight both Spence and Crawford again, what would you have done differently to win the fights? Do you look back? I think there was areas where you guys could have exploited them more, or what would you say to that?
I'm gonna go ahead and go first. My guy called me. We talked maybe like a week after the fight, and we're just kind of, you know, just talking about the fight and all this and that. And the call got quiet. I mean, still quiet. And it's like, you know, I'm still like, you know, a little hurt that I didn't get the win. It's dead quiet. And all of a sudden he goes, "Man, I wish you had went to the body more." And I was like, "Man, me too, man. That's the only thing I wish I had done." You got to get to Errol's body. That's the one thing I wish I had done more was go to his body. And then with Terence, it was a moment, you know, and you know, that moment I wish had never come for me. So,
you know, I don't want to take the shine away from him, but obviously mine's preparation in lockdown, not having my main trainer with me, Dominic Ingle, having a trainer who was Spanish who couldn't really speak English. This was against Terence Crawford. You know, preparation in that fight were all wrong. And I think with, you know, obviously Errol Spence fighting Golovkin and fighting at middleweight and then going on my holiday and eating like those fighters do. And then having Errol Spence as my mandatory and having coming back down to 147. As you know, I'm a huge 147 fighter back then. And, you know, not getting the best out of myself in training and killing myself to make the weight and not being able to push on the second half of the fight with him, you know. So mine would come down to preparation and my lifestyle, but I don't want to take the light away from them two fighters.
All right. Thank you for that question, Jonathan. Next up, Kendrick Johnson for MMA Weekly. Kendrick, if you could please unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
My questions for the whole panel. Breadman alluded to it almost spot on. I like you, Mr. Edwards. Nobody's talking about how slow that Terence gets off. You see either one of them, because Errol got off slow against his last fight. What's the Cuban guy?
Ugas.
But do you see either fighter, if there is 3-1 after 4 rounds, either fighter getting caught? Because neither one of them has gotten caught in their career, and they're great finishers. So y'all see either fighter, regardless of who come out fast or slow, once they get up by 2 rounds, losing that lead on the cards. So they're so talented.
Was that question for me or?
Yes, Stephen, Virgil, why don't we start with the trainers on this one?
Virgil, you could go first. Go ahead.
I think that either fighter, either if they're down in the fight, has the ability to come back, even the fight, and even take the lead. I think the first 4 rounds will determine how the rest of the fight is going to go. With a fight of that magnitude, you should be able to see the necessary adjustments being made or attempted to be made in the first 4 rounds. I think both men understand that they have to get the respect of the other real quick. I think the key to Terence is stopping Errol from what he wants to do is to hurt Errol. And I think the key to Errol is to keep the grind. And if Crawford can't stop the grind, then I think he's going to have this momentum accelerated and make it very difficult for Crawford. Again, it's a fight that has so many ebbs and flows coming into it. It all depends on the camp, who you have in their sparring. Can the sparring partner duplicate the opponent as best as they could? Of course, Errol is going to have orthodox and southpaw sparring in camp. Crawford really only has to have the grind out type of sparring partner. And then it comes down to the subtle things, the real subtle things. I think at some point game plans will be thrown out the window, and I think the instincts of the fighters will take over. Game plans a lot of times can be overrated. It could be down to one punch practice on in the gym, one strategy practice on in the gym. But usually when the fighter wins, the trainer gets the glory of having this superb game plan, especially if he wins convincingly. And if the fighter loses, we don't talk about the game plan. But I think at this level where they are, the experience that they've had over their careers, I think at some point, whatever game plan you had going on, at some point will go out the window and the instincts of the fighters will take over and they will instinctively adjust. Once they've been in the ring so long, you could have a game plan, but they're in that ring. So you have to watch what they're doing and follow what they're doing and follow that game plan, especially if it's successful. The only time I feel like a game plan is crucial is when your fighter is having a difficult time. And then you have to come up with some sort of strategy to try to alleviate the issues that are going on into the ring.
You know, the way I look at it as, I think that it's more important for Errol to get a better start than it is for Terence. I think I'm gonna tell you why. I don't have a pick on this fight yet. I think it's a 50-50 fight. But it's one thing that I've noticed is that Terence can be in cruise control and not be going like all the way 100% full speed ahead and still get results. With the way Errol's style is, he's more of a grinder. He's not as a dynamic of a sharpshooter where he has to kind of like go a little bit harder to get results. So here's what I think about that. If Errol is going 100% full blast ahead, throwing 70, 80 punches around, and Terence is about, you know, real smooth, picking his shots, not really throwing much hard. Because you watch Terence, he throws a lot of touch shots and then he hits you with the same shot. He'll hit you with a shot at about 60% power, and then he'll come back with the same shot. It'll be like 100% power. And you're like, God damn, where'd that come from? Because he'll just be touching you with stuff. You know, Terence doesn't allow himself to be carried really fast. So if Errol is going 100 miles an hour and Terence is about 60, 70% real smooth and seeing everything, and let's say after 4 to 6 rounds, they're even or Terence is up and Errol's going 100 miles an hour, Errol's in trouble. You know what I mean? So I think that it's better if Errol gets a faster start than with Terence, because Terence doesn't need a really good start to win the fight. Both guys are late round sharks, but Errol's style is more physically demanding. He doesn't have that laid back picking kind of style. So if he's down early and he's fighting 100 miles an hour, I feel like that he'll be in more trouble because Terence has that gear where he could just switch it on and just turn it up. So if he's even with Errol and he's only fighting at about 60, 70% energy output, and then he turns it up, you know, Errol will have a big problem. So that's the one thing that I've seen in both fighters is that Errol kind of goes harder, where Terence is kind of more smoother and he picks his spot and his energy levels goes up and down depending on what's going on in the fight. If you watch the Porter fight, I told Shawn this, I thought Shawn was doing great. I thought he was outboxing Terence for large spots, to be honest. And then somebody said to Terence outside the ring, was like, yo, you losing. He was like, what? And then he just turned it up to another level. It was weird. You know, I'm not saying Errol doesn't have that gear. I'm not saying that. But Earl's gear is more like, you know, where Terence is kind of like, oh, I'm right here. Okay, let's see if you can go up here. So I think that is a little bit more important for Errol to get a better start from what I've observed from both guys.
All right, perfect. Thank you both, Virgil and Steven. And thank you for the question, Kendrick. Oh, sorry, Shawn. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I want to piggyback off of what Breadman just said, because if Terence is able to fight against Errol Spence like that, be able to be that comfortable and manage his energy the way that it's just been described by Breadman there, we got to start talking about Terence Crawford in the same breath with Manny Pacquiao, in the same breath with Andre Ward, in the same breath as Floyd Mayweather, because those are three fighters who have been great in every single fight that they've had in their own way, and have been able to do it without anybody being able to disrupt who they are. Obviously, we've seen some disruption in Manny's career, but Manny's still virtually amazing at a lot of points in his career. My thing with this fight is, and it's something that you cannot measure. You can't measure another fighter's energy. You can't measure another fighter's mentality through the fight. That was another difference that I saw in my fight with Terence. Terence never got uncomfortable, and Terence never showed me that he that there was anything unsettling within his heart and his mind throughout the fight. And I pride myself on making fighters uncomfortable. Never once did I see Terence uncomfortable. When I went back and just analyzed the fight in my head and things like that, I didn't apply the kind of pressure that Errol is going to apply. I didn't apply that straight in your face mentality that I usually fought with. And I thought that may have been a reason why I didn't see Terence get uncomfortable. If Terence does not get uncomfortable against Errol Spence Jr., he's going to beat Errol Spence Jr. And we will have to talk about Terence Crawford the same way we talk about Andre Ward, the same way we talk about Floyd Mayweather, and in the same way we've talked about Mr. Manny Pacquiao as well.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Shawn. We got time for a couple more here. Our next question is going to come from James Bell with the Boxing Source. James, if you could unmute yourself, please ask your question.
All right, thanks, Andrew. This question is for the panel, but it goes off of what Shawn Porter told Ray Flores earlier in reference to Errol Spence, and that, you know, even though he has like a come forward style, it seems like a number of people kind of underestimate his overall abilities and what he's done in the past as an amateur, and, you know, having that type of boxing ability. Do you think that that could be a factor here in this particular fight, given that Terence Crawford is a multi-talented fighter, and that, you know, Errol Spence may have to bring that out of him instead of, you know, just having that come forward style?
Who goes first? Who goes first?
Start it off.
I think Errol is a real good boxer. I just think he boxes going forward. And when the guy boxes going forward, then they don't really get the same accolades as the guy that's doing a lot of smooth moves, and like a Pernell Whitaker or like a Floyd Mayweather, you know, or even Shakur Stevenson. I think Errol, you know, people use the word basic as an insult, but it's not an insult. It's a compliment. You know, he's not fancy. He doesn't show a lot of fancy moves. He doesn't do a lot to avoid punches, but that doesn't mean he's not boxing. He's just boxing, and he keeps it simple. You know, it's jab, straight left hand, right hook, step here, step there, keeps his hands up. He's kind of the same ilk of a Marvin Hagler, of a Winky Wright. And those kind of guys, they well-rounded fighters. And, you know, I know this is a 50-50 fight, but more people that I know is picking Terence than picking Errol. And I think the reason why is because you could see Terence's gifts more obviously than you could see Errol's. And again, I don't have a pick on the fight, but a lot of times the well-rounded fighter, he has to be put in with the dynamic fighter to get his full props as far as historically. because if you just picking them with your eyeballs, you usually pick the guy that's more aesthetically pleasing. But if you look back, right, well-rounded guy, B-Hop. Felix Trinidad is a dynamic guy. So when they fight, nobody remembers this, but I know B-Hop was a 6-1 underdog because Tito Trinidad was more dynamic, the knockouts and things like that. So you didn't really get a chance to know how good the well-rounded guy was until he went up against him. Look at Winky Wright and Shane Mosley. Shane Mosley is the dynamic guy, but when he fight Winky Wright with the basic fundamentals, he was able to beat him. But if you look at those two guys on paper, or if you're in the hitting pads with them and you're in the gym, you look at Shane Mosley as the more talented, more dynamic fighter. And I could go through our history. Marvin Hagler, I know that's one of Shawn's favorite fighters. If you look at him and Hearns got the whippy jab, the big right hand, the reach and the power. But when they meet each other in the ring, the dynamic, the more well-rounded guy won the fight. So I think that with Errol, I think Errol does box well. I just think that he doesn't box in a fancy way that kind of gets the media and the fans to kind of, you know, be enamored with his style. His gifts don't show like that. Virg got a well-rounded guy in Andre Ward, and you know, Ward didn't really get the props that a lot of gold medalists, you know, got. He didn't start getting the props that he deserved till after the Super 6, because the things he does are so subtle and it's well-rounded, and it's not like the dynamics in one area where it's a big one-punch knockout, or like give you the Roy Jones look or Tommy Hearns look. So those kind of guys, it takes them a little bit longer to get appreciated. So that's one of the reasons why I think this is a 50-50 fight, because, you know, Earl, he does things in a subtle way. Like for example, the Mikey Garcia fight, you know, Earl just basically jabbed Mikey Garcia and took a half a step back and just fought a conservative fight and literally won every round. It was like a complete shutout, but he got criticism for it because he didn't knock the smaller man out, but he totally undressed him and outboxed him. You know, so he does have that in his game. And, you know, it could show up the night of the fight. You know, sometimes those guys need that special opponent in front of them to bring out what they really are, because they don't really show all of their stuff against the lesser guys.
All right, thank you. Oh, sure. Go ahead, Virgil.
I think another factor that has to be taken under consideration is the climate that the fighters are training in. I know Errol is down there in that hot, humid heat, and I don't know how he's holding up to it, but then he's going to be moving to Vegas, I believe, 3 weeks out, going into dry, hot heat. So I think the week of the fight, as they make weight, you don't really know how much that has taken out of you until you start making and cutting weight and how you cut the weight. I know that Crawford is in a cooler environment up in the Colorado high altitudes, but he plans to come down 3 weeks before. So he has one heat factor to adjust to. I don't know how hard it is for him to make weight, but I think the last week will be very telling on how the fighters perform that night, particularly making weight in an environment that they trained in. I think you have to take that under consideration.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Virgil. Thank you for that question, James. Our last question for today from the media is going to come from Matt Linehan. Matt, please unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
This question's more for the trainers. When a fight of this magnitude is made, how important is the mental preparation of the fighters so that they can cope with the size of the occasion? Because this is the biggest fight of both men's careers, and it's one of these fights that's, you know, everybody in the sport's talking about. And do you think this could play a factor in the fight?
Go ahead, Brett.
I think that both guys have what it takes mentally. I've been watching, I probably have seen maybe 25 of Errol Spence's fights. You know, he's with PBC, so you get to see him. And I've probably seen at least 20 of Terence Crawford's fights. And I think that both guys have what it takes to keep up in the ante, to keep, you know, dealing with the moment, because it is a moment, you know, and as Shawn and Kell can attest, you know, those bright lights can do something to you, you know, but I think that both guys have that composed, mature way about them in the ring and what they do. I don't think I think that both of them will be okay from that aspect. I think that a lot of this fight is going to come down to determination and who's actually willing to go there. You know, as there's a dark place that sometimes you got to go when the guy is as good as you are. And I think it's probably going to come down to that. But I don't see either one of them choking up under the bright lights. You know, Terence, if you look at his first defense of his lightweight title was against Gamboa. The crowd was rocking. He was just fine. You know, they sent Errol over there to fight Kell Brook in the UK with the raucous crowd. And, you know, he was just fine. Both guys seem to, you know, have that clutch gene where they're okay under the bright lights. You know, I don't think that that's going to be a factor. I don't think we're dealing with mentally weak fighters that give. Every time I've seen one of their backs up against the wall, they up the ante and they raise the stakes. And I think we're going to see this. I think with their personalities and their style, I don't really go crazy over a lot of big fight announcements because sometimes the styles don't always mesh. I think that this fight, it might start out a little bit slow where both guys are trying to pick their spots, but with their personality, I think once they start cooking, we're going to see something special. You know, for the purists, you know, the casuals, they may say, oh, it's not enough action. But for the purists, I think we're going to see some great stuff from both guys. I think we're going to see a classic. This is one fight. Everybody can't do this, but this is one fight that I wish was 15 rounds because I think both of these guys are 15-round fighters and would have flourished in a 15-round era. If you look at Leonard and Hearns, Leonard is my favorite fighter, and that's my favorite fight. But the first 4 or 5 rounds, it really wasn't much action. But what was happening is they was settling for the storm. You know, that was like a tale of two fights. I see Kell shaking his head. He probably watched that fight. But then as the fight went on around the 6th or 7th round, Leonard upped the stakes, Hearns upped the stakes, Leonard upped the stakes. Then he had a 14-round classic, you know, and I wish that this fight was 15 rounds because I think both of these guys are that kind of fight. I don't know if we're going to get a chance to see enough in 12 rounds. They may have to do it again because both of these guys are going to keep going up.
I couldn't put it any better. I concur with Brad. There's nothing to even top that off.
All right. Well, thank you, Virgil. Thank you, Matt, for that last question. Thank you to all the media that joined us today. And of course, to Shawn, Kell, Virgil, and Steven for taking the time. With that, I'll turn it back over to Ray to close things out for us.
Before I get ready to let these guys go, what a panel we have had as we inch closer to Saturday, July 29th on Showtime pay-per-view, T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Errol Spence Jr., Terence Bud Crawford go head-to-head for the undisputed welterweight championship of the world. I'll start off with you, Showtime Shawn Porter, but you know it's that time. I got to ask, if you don't have one, that's fine. But Shawn, I want to know from you your prediction on how do you think it's going to go down on Saturday, July 29th.
Shawn, you're muted. If you could please.
My apologies. I don't have a pick. I don't know who's gonna win this fight. I think that it's just, to me, this is what boxing truly is right here. Both guys have basically everything needed to win this fight, from the power to the speed to, I mean, everything. There's really no one you can't. I truly don't think anyone can look at this fight and say that guy's gonna win because that. There's no one way that it happens. There's so many outcomes, possibilities of this fight. I think the one possibility, or the one thing that we know is not going to happen, is not going to be any foul play. It's not going to be any low blows. It's not going to be a headbutt that ends this fight prematurely. I'm going to go ahead and say it simply, man. The fans win. Boxing purists especially win in this one.
Shawn, we appreciate it as always. Kell, Brook, how do you think the fight is going to unfold on Saturday, July 29th between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford?
I honestly don't know. You know, I'm on the fence also. You know, one day I'm saying Crawford, the next day I'm saying Spence. You know, it's one of them. There's a small, very minute margin between both of them. They're both unbelievable fighters. And like Shawn said, the fans have got, you know, going to get the best of both fighters at the right time. So it's going to come down to the night. We're going to wait and see.
A true 50-50 fight. Virgil Hunter, have you thought about how the fight might go?
I think it's just fair to say that if I was able to spend 3 weeks in Errol's camp and watch the training, watch the strategies, watch what he does after training, how he recuperates, how he reinvigorates himself, and the same thing with Crawford, I think that that would be able to allow me to have a more accurate pick. But I think that I'll be more settled on a pick after during the week of the fight, watching the mentalities and the attitudes of the fighters, and particularly on that scale. I think in this fight, that scale is going to say a lot because both fighters are in their 30s. They've been at this weight. Errol's been at this weight his whole career. It can't be easy for him to make this weight. I don't know how hard it is for Crawford to make the weight. I think down in that Vegas heat and training in that environment, I think it's going to be a factor. And of course, the rehydration process. So I'd have to be subjected to each fighter's mental makeup over a period of time to see the mental and concentration and the mental fortitude to be able to make a pick at this time. At this time, I'm just going to enjoy the fight. Hope to get there, see it live. It's just a great fight for boxing.
All right, and I will end it with Stephen Breadman Edwards. Breadman, do you have any inkling as to where the fight might go on Saturday, July 29th?
He's going to tell us. He can decide now. He's going to pick one. He's going to pick one.
No, you know what, Kell? I honestly don't have a pick right now. That's the honest truth. I think that my prediction is we're going to have a fight of the century. I think it's going to be a great fight. I wouldn't be surprised if both guys hit the canvas. I think it's going to be a great fight. I don't have a pick, though. I think it's so close and there's so many little things that you guys know in the gym and things like that, that is really, really hard. Anybody who picks this fight with a bullet real early is because that's who they wanted to win. And I'm more like, I'm objective. You know, I got a relationship with both teams. I'm happy for everybody that's involved. And I really don't have a pick right now. I just think it's going to be a great fight. I am curious of one thing, though. I want to see where Errol rehydrates to. Because I watched that Danny Garcia fight. I don't know why I sit up in the middle of the night and I watch fights. I watched the Danny Garcia fight. And Errol looked skinny that fight. If you look at his body real good, he didn't fill out. Danny was like bigger that fight. Shawn, watch that fight and tell me what you think about Errol's body.
I know what you're talking about. I remember seeing that now.
He looks like he was in like the 150s. You know, that's what I saw in that fight. I saw a guy that didn't get into the 160s from 147. And y'all guys are big, man. Nobody tells what they walk around, but you don't want to be as big as Errol Spence and only rehydrate into the 150s. You know, so I'm curious to see. It's been well documented that, you know, he's probably struggling to make weight and he may move up after this fight. So I'm really curious to see if he can rehydrate the 161, 162, 163, because I think that's a big, big factor in this fight coming down the stretch.
All right. Well, you heard it here from our esteemed panelists. A great fight of the year, undisputed welterweight championship of the world. Terence Bud Crawford, Errol Spence Jr. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to the media. And we will see you during Fight Week in Las Vegas, Saturday, July 29th. It all goes down on Showtime pay-per-view from T-Mobile Arena. Errol Spence Jr., Terence Bud Crawford. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everybody. Take